Thank you very much, Konstantin, and I would like, as usual, to thank very much our leader, Gerald Pollack, who is absent from here, but I hope that he feels my gratitude to him for organization of all these conferences. And this time I decided, since we have this Jubilee 10th conference, I decided to give a talk which is probably not very deeply scientific, but a little more metaphysical or not nature philosophical. I'll try to give you my fantasy about the connection of one of the most controversial and most discussed macrobiological problem. That is the problem of biological evolution or development in general. With what we are discussing here on the level of molecules, on the level of associates, on the level of nanoscopic, microscopic, and so on the level of water science. And I'll try to probably together with you, or just try to show you my a little maybe slippery ideas that everything in biology stems from water properties. And in fact, I would just make such a claim that we are, and not only we, but all living things are just different modifications of water. So I give the title of my talk, Progressive Evolution, the Inherent Property of Aqueous Systems. And when we use the word evolution, thanks to our education, the first, the counterpart of this word evolution is the word Darwinism. Evolution is Darwin, Darwin is evolution. That's we were given at schools, at universities, and so on and so forth. But in fact, of course, many, all people who are present here, they know that there are two major and, in a sense, alternative concepts of evolution of living matter. That is Darwinian, or better to say neo-Darwinian concepts, because from my point of view, which I have no time to develop, the Darwinian concept of evolution is much more rich and much more profound than so-called neo-Darwinian synthetic evolutionary theory. And Lamarck's concept of evolution. And I will stress several times the difference between them. The first concept is change over time, just change over time. Evolution is Darwinian evolution doesn't expect any progression, any progress. It's change over time. And Lamarck's concept is essentially unfolding. The turning of something hidden, something potential into real or development. I wouldn't like to speak too much about the Darwinian concept of evolution, but I cannot leave it without any mentioning. And I would like to remind you what you know from high school and from universities, that Charles Darwin published his book, which was entitled The Origin of Species by means of natural selection, and so on and so forth. It's not about evolution, it's about origin of species. And his, to make it short, evolution as change, according to Darwin, of the set of species over time due to natural selection. So, natural selection results in survival of the fetus. Living organisms are more or less passive objects. Their activity is restricted, their own activity is restricted to miraculous strive to multiply. In fact, because you cannot explain why they are so eager to multiply, but nevertheless that is fact. And the chance variation in the progeny may provide them with the ability to survive in the given environmental conditions. And according to this formula, evolution results from the survival of the fittest and elimination of the losers, and just the next thought, the appearance of more and more feet and more progressive forms. Though, as you understand, from this formulation it doesn't follow directly. I made my own analysis of Darwinian concept or Darwinian theory, which in fact is in the last paragraphs of his book Origin of Species. And as any real scientific theory, it is based on postulates. And from these postulates, you have consequences. And these consequences is just the theory. So what are postulates? That all living things are variable, but variations are usually chance variations, that this variety is inherited, and so this, thanks to the postulate of inheritance, nobody would object that there is inheritance in living things. There is transmissions of variations of the progeny, and the most important but very often forgotten postulate of Darwinian theory, which is in fact Malthusian point, and without it Darwinian theory doesn't work. That striving to the utmost to increase in numbers under the deficiency of resources is postulated. It results in that not all the progeny can survive. They have to struggle for life, and there is natural selection. Some unfit, they die out. Some fetus, they survive. And due to this process, there is divergence of character and the extinction of less improved forms, survival of the fetus. These fetus, again, they go into this same scheme, and as a result, so all this is based on the concluding remarks to the Origin of Species. So this machine works, and it really, this is kind of evolution, because originally you have some set of species, and later after this process you have another set of species. They are different. This is evolution. So this is theoretical approach, and does it have any real realization in real life? In fact, there are some natural phenomena which satisfactorily fit in the Darwin's model. One of the natural phenomena which can be described by Darwinian theory is malignant tumor progression, because malignant cells, they have inheritance, they have variability, and they strive to utmost to increase in numbers under the deficiency of resources. There is deficiency of resources inside any organism. So the malignant tumor progression, not the progress, I think that you will agree with me that the tumor progresses and not becomes more and more progressive. That is Darwinian-like process. Another, I don't go into details, but it was just really described, that pathological population waves, which is one of the most brightest examples of these waves, is locust phase transition. That is also Darwinian process. And both these processes, in fact, result in evolution. But this evolution is kind of not gradation or development or increase in organization, increase in perfection and so on. Of course, one may think that, of course, malignant cells are much more aggressive, they multiply better, they are more fit to the environment and so on. But it seems to me that slowly multiplying normal cells are a little more differentiated, and they are a little more optimal for living systems than malignant. So, realization of Darwinian model results in involution or degradation rather than evolution, gradation or development. Now, fortunately, during the last couple of decades, Lamarck's name is mentioned in biological literature more and more. And I would say that now there is, for example, epigenetic theory, things like this. According to Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, evolution is the result of internal need of living things for progressive development. This kind of internal need of living things, it sounds like something metaphysical, something mystical, and so on. But still, half a century before Darwin, Lamarck's theory of evolution was the first theory of evolution real. And second, as I'll try to show you, it is much more scientific, not much more scientific, no less scientific than the Darwinian principle of evolution. So, according to Lamarck, nature endows animal life with the power to make organization gradually more complex and to bring increasing complexity and perfection to their organization. So, the principle of perfection and progression is imprinted into the natural laws. It is just natural laws which Lamarck formulated two laws or postulates, if you like Darwin formulated postulates, Lamarck also postulated these principles. According to the first law of forms of life, thanks to internal activity, and this, what is internal activity? Use and disuse of organs. That first means that living things have their own activity. The use and disuse of organs, they transform into higher form. And this transformation into higher form may be inherited because there is the inheritance of acquired adaptive characteristic that is most important. Not all characteristics are inherited, but only adaptive characteristics are inherited, and they provide for the progressive evolution. So the evolution, according to Lamarck, is postulated as the internal, as there is the primal natural cause which makes all living things, due to use and disuse, due to their internal activity, transform into higher forms. Now, again, what is the major difference between Lamarckism as a concept and Darwinism as a concept? According to Lamarckism, living things are active subjects, and they directly change, mutate in response to environmental challenges. Progressive evolution is the necessary natural phenomenon, or the consequence of the nature of a living substance. According to Darwinism, living things are essentially passive objects. The only activity is to multiply. They stochastically change, mutate, and those who fit to the environmental conditions survive. Their activity is reduced to strive for multiplication. Now, if to go further, so Lamarck was not only a philosopher, he not only claimed that there exist such laws and so on, he tried to explain how this living matter or can have these properties. And according to Lamarck, responsiveness of living things to environmental external factors is provided by the nature of chemical material of living things. And very few people know, and I myself knew this very recently, that according to Lamarck, the chemical material of living things, gelatinous and mucilaginous matter, or mucous matter. Okay, I would like to remind you one title of one book, Cells, Gels, and Engines of Life. Probably some people know who wrote this book. Gelatinous material is the chemical material of living things according to Lamarck. This is the first fact, the first property of living things which provides the movement to progression. And second, self-organizing dynamics of fluxes of subtle fluids. By subtle fluids, he meant electricity and heat, which is flowing through this gelatinous matter, and in such a way, these fluxes, they make forms in this living matter, they make it active, they increase its activity, and these subtle fluids shape this material in a way that leads to its self-maintenance and complexification. So everything is in dynamics, you see, and dynamic organization manifested in living entity activities is central to Lamarck view. And that is from his Philosophy Zoologica, which was published in 1809. these gelatinous states of matter, which alone could support living organization, have been and continue to be formed spontaneously. And there is no some stochastic chance factors which stick them together and they form spontaneously. Once the matter is exposed to fluxes of environmental caloric, or let's call it today the infrared radiation, that's caloric here, and electricity, the matter self-organizes into living, self-sustaining entities, which are endowed with the ability to nourish this self-sustaining entity, able to nourish themselves, grow, and adapt to their conditions of life. So it was written in 1809 and completely forgotten, and 170 years later, another great scientist whose name is Albert Szent-Györgyi, he wrote that biology didn't succeed in understanding of basic living functions because it focused its attention on a substance in the form of particles, dissecting them from two matrices, water and electromagnetic fields. These two matrices, which were mentioned by Lamarck in 1809. So again, once gelatinous matter is exposed to fluxes of environmental caloric and electricity, the matter self-organizing into living, self-sustaining entities. So, and the next part, so what is this gelatinous matter? This gelatinous matter is 99% water, or even more. And all these properties which are described by Lamarck is water is able to self-organize. And here is the third man who claimed, not just claimed, but demonstrated this very convincingly, as Gerald Pollack. And self-organization of water is self-organization of water near the, according to Pollack, near the hydrophilic surfaces. There is no question, and many people at this conference, it's already like a dogma, or fortunately not a dogma, but the matter for further development, that near any hydrophilic surfaces, water becomes formed more and more organized, which is interfacial water, which is different from properties in its properties from bulk water in physical chemical properties. And water is self-organization. Interfacial water is the fourth stage of water, which is liquid crystalline, which is quasi-polymeric, which is coherent. Is it Lamarck's gelatinous water? In fact, this water should be sensitive to these subtle fluxes of heat and energy from outside. It is not simply organized like ice, for example. No, it is kind of living water. Its organization is much higher. It is dynamic organization. And due to its dynamic organization, first, this water has the difference between, there is a difference between this water and bulk water which is adjacent to it. And this difference, there are many differences. One of these differences is that this water is negatively charged in comparison to bulk water. So that means that there is a charge separation, electrical potential difference, and electrical potential difference may be realized in electron fluxes from this water to that water. Again, water itself is a flux here. First and second, that was a real discovery which was made by Pollack's group, that radiation, especially light in infrared part of the spectrum, increases electron donating capacity of interfacial water. Again, returning back, Lamarck's subtle fluids, they affect this gelatinous matter and make it more and more alive and more living. Now, this water, according to Lamarck, life is active. Living things are active. They have their own activity. Their activity is not the result of acting on them external forces. That's why Lamarck called these fluids subtle fluids and not forceful fluids which affected this water. And it should be non-equilibrium. It should be very active. And this activity of water, now from my point of view, is provided, not only mine of course, but some other people, like Emilia Dergiuvic, is provided that since this water has reducing properties, it may donate these electrons to the oxidizer, and the major oxidizer, which is everywhere in all the environment, which is also produced due to water splitting, that is oxygen. So that means that this water, under the action of subtle fluids, subtle energies from outside, can donate these electrons to oxygen and or be burned by oxygen. And what is the product of this burning of water? It is again water. 2 molecules of water are oxidized by 1 molecule of oxygen, and the products of this reaction, again oxygen and water. So the bird phoenix, which is burnt and then regained again. Simply, this is the organized, dynamically structured water which is burned, and this is disorganized. So what we have due to water burning, increase in entropy, which is the source of energy and so on. Now, Gerald Pollack was talking about water which is adjacent to surfaces, but there is also bulk water. Bulk water, is it always disorganized? No. And long ago, before Pollack's works, there appeared papers of Preparata, Dergiuvic, Vitiella, where they, based on quantum physical, quantum field theory and quantum electrodynamics, came to the conclusion that in water there coexist coherent domains and non-coherent water. And what are coherent domains? That's again dynamically organized, structured, in a sense, dynamically structured water. So when you have vapor and when you cool it, or when it cools, when it gives away the chaotic energy, then there is condensation of vapor into water, and automatically, according to this theory, in water there is self-organization, and these coherent domains are also electron donors, and they reduce oxygen, so the process of water burning may go on the surfaces very efficiently, less efficiently, but also in bulk and liquid water. So water is able to self-organize at nano and microscopic levels on surfaces, nano levels in bulk water. And all of us know that water is able to self-organize on macroscopic levels. So here are 2 examples or 3 examples of self-organization of water. There is not external force which makes such clouds. These clouds form themselves. There is no external force which makes vortices, sometimes giant vortices in water. They self-organize themselves. It's not somebody who is rotating the cloud to make a tornado. Tornado forms itself. So the property of self-organization, that means increase in perfection, increase in complexity. This is intrinsic property of this substance. So, in fact, what water does by using all this internal property, it is able to transform waste energy of worms, for example, or which is dissipated, all these fields which are dissipated in the environment, into a high-grade free energy of very low entropy and very high in efficiency to produce changes or to produce work. So water is a step-up transformer. Here I give you an example of this very highly organized water, which is 99.9% water, this organism, and also it is shining light. So it transforms environmental cold water temperature into light, which has temperature of tens of thousands of degrees, in fact. Now, we were talking about water, but there is no such abstract thing as water. Water is only in textbooks. The real water is always a composition, and one of the substances from which you practically impossible to get rid, and which is present in all waters standing on your table, for example, that are carbonates. They are always present in water. And that is already, we studied, and I told about this many times on these conferences, that bicarbonates, they support long-term water burning. So I just claim, and there is some evidence, that bicarbonates, which we produce in our body due to our respiration, due to burning of organic substances, are the catalyst of water burning, water splitting into electrons and hydrogen, and then oxidation of oxygen. And we found that hermetically closed bicarbonate solutions, which we initiate the intensive burning by adding very small quantities of hydrogen peroxide, then they can burn in the hermetically closed test tubes for years. In fact, you may have Eppendorf test tube with 1 milliliter of water, and you start this burning of water. During the first days and weeks, there is a tremendous increase in intensity of burning, not decrease, but increase in intensity of burning, and then it continues to burn, and there is, you see there is an increase and decrease. It may be temperature dependent, it may be other factors dependent, and one of the factors which affect this water burning is activity, subtle flux from environment, and we don't know even what is this flux, that are cosmophysical effects. And here I give the example of effect of moon eclipse upon the intensity of water burning. Here water was burning for 1 week under the calm conditions, cosmophysical conditions. And here there was a start of moon eclipse in Moscow. The increase in intensity of water burning was at least twofold, and then it was burning on this twofold high intensity for exactly 2 days, and then it fell down and continued to burn. As a matter of fact, probably some of you know that 2 days ago there was a moon eclipse, and there was a super moon, and it coincided with moon eclipse, which happened on in the morning on Monday. As a matter of fact, we studied water in our laboratory last week, and got the intensity of burning something like this. And when we started these same samples of water, different samples of water from different bottles, from different sources, on Monday and on Tuesday also, today is Thursday, the increase in intensity of water burning was from 70 to 100 times before, in comparison to the previous week. So I hope that we are in a very excited state here, because we are also this kind of water. Now, carbonates present in aqueous systems, they not only catalyze water burning, but transform into a lot of active particles. When water is split and burning, there is oxygen atoms minus, that is kind of free radical. There is such another species, and organic sooner or later appears. If nitrogen is present, it will be also excited, ionized, and complex organic compounds, including polymers, will emerge. For example, this aminocarbonyl reaction or Maillard reaction is very well known, and the reaction due to which automatically, spontaneously, due to self-organization, there appear more and more complex organic substances in water, including nucleosides, nucleotides, polymers, amino acids, and things like this. And due to these processes of internal activity of water and presence in water of these catalysts and other substances, more and more hydrophilic surfaces emerge in this aqueous system, and its structural energy, energy of these free radical reactions which go in it, increases, and it becomes more and more organized, and there is ability to perform work. It increases its ability for use and disuse. So, aqueous systems, I come to now to two conclusions, in which liquid crystalline or coherent water and quasi-chaotic bulk water coexists. in which charge separation between these two parts is ensured, in which electron flow from coherent water to oxygen present in bulk water is provided by, for example, catalysts and also by external subtle influences of this water. It may be able to transform external low density energy or subtle fluxes into organized coherent free energy. And the necessary condition for such system functioning is availability enough energy, thermal or infrared or other, to support liquid state of water. Several days ago it was announced that liquid water was found on Mars. And I would like also to point your attention that quantity of water in solar system is tremendous. For example, on satellites of Jupiter and Saturn, the quantity of water is much, liquid water is much more than in Earth oceans. So this is liquid water which is so far from the sun. So these conditions are needed for spontaneous emergence, existence, and self-organization, development of living things in all the forms known on Earth. And now the final slide, that the intrinsic activity of aqueous systems in the is the Lamarckian prime cause that endows animal life with power to make organization gradually more complex and to bring increasing complexity in perfection. And I give here the names, portraits of 4 people, and as I told already today to Jerry Pollack, from my point of view, he is reincarnation of Lamarck.
Thank you. I think your theory very nicely explained the origin of life on Earth. And you could add also that the helical structure of water probably will be the basis for the helical structure of proteins and DNA. But so the first word, memory on life, was water. But as you said, flexible memory because it shares many factors. So there was a selection, a Darwinian selection of molecules which could have best fitted for memory, and DNA was emergent from that. So you can combine your ideas with also the future evolution of life, not excluding the possibility that water was maybe only one factor, that imagination, innovation of life continue all the time. And this leads to another concept, which is the meaning, the quantum field theory, and all meanings and anticipation, which could explain also what's going on.
Thank you for your note. I completely agree with you, and I also would like only to add that Lamarck understood the necessity of dissipation of this energy. That energy is fluxing in, is transformed, is concentrated by this gelatinous matter, and it should dissipate in order for the process to go on continuously and to have this continuous change for perfection. So again, more than 200 years ago it was said, before Prigozhin.